7/29/13. The Lord has really put on my mind and heart today about the polished cross. The polished cross. Back in the Roman day, they didn't have big, huge sanders and sandpaper and just polish it up all pretty to be able to put criminals on the cross. It was done by hand tools, jagged, old, bark peeled off. If they reused them over many, many, many years, the splinters might have worn down and some areas of it would be more smooth. But it wasn't an easy thing for who they perceived as criminals, like Jesus and Peter. Whether you were innocent or not, they didn't make it like we make our prisoners today. They didn't pamper them and coddle them and baby them and make sure that they had the finest linen and the finest clothing and the finest cell and the finest bedding and the most beautiful toiletries and a TV. They didn't do all that. They downed a tree, chopped it with hand tools, made them carry them after they whipped them to the way up the mountain, put it up and hung them there to die. But it seems the more years that go by, we see a more polished cross, more decorative, sanded down and stained with a really pretty wood stain, soft to the touch, nice and smooth, no ragged edges, squared off like it's been run through a sawmill. And as God was giving me this visual today in this message, can really relate it to the church. The church as a whole, fully united. Or is it? Some Christians have really polished up the cross to make it feel good, to make it look good, to make it more presentable. People are worrying more about the airs that they can put on for others. Keeping up with the Joneses type ideals. How does it look? Is it pretty? Is it fit my decor of who I am, how I live? The reality of the cross is that it wasn't polished. The cross was a punishment for what the government then thought of criminals and to put them to death. They didn't make it easy. They wanted it to hurt. They wanted it to be painful, so that every aspect, from the time of their arrest until the time they took their last breath, was anguish, was violent, was gruesome, painful. That it would bring fear and pain and agony. To be a spectacle to those that would even think of doing those kind of things or being those kind of Christian people, believers. No. The cross wasn't polished. It wasn't made smooth and treated and splinters removed or stained. It was hacked and marred very carelessly. It was a statement all in itself. That is what Jesus carried. On his back, rubbing against the open wounds. For by his stripes we are healed, the stripes that he took at the whipping post. Slashed open his skin. Oh my God. His skin ripped wide open. On a real hot day. And then having to carry that rugged cross as it rubbed against those open sores, causing him to bleed even more excessively until he reached where they had chosen them to hang them. No, church. They called it a rugged cross for a reason. It's not a polished cross. In our ways, how we are in our private life, how we are to public life, and how we treat people, and how we view things, and the traditions that we have, and some of the things that we've accepted in this world, so that all the people can live together as free people to do what they want. That's not how it's supposed to be. And by accepting the evil, thoughtless, and stupid things of this world, and letting it become the norm, and being more focused on all the bad things that are happening in this world instead of on the Word, instead of on Jesus, and on what He did on that rugged cross. It's just polishing it. It's so easy for man to just sort of, well, that's what He did for us. Yeah. And not to feel the pain. Not to hear Him crying. To see His face as huge tears run down His cheeks. And the crying and the gurgle in His voice. And to see the blood dripping from His brow to His feet. No, it's not a polished cross. It's a rugged cross. A cross with so much agony. Of torture. Of pain. Jesus paid the ultimate price on that rugged cross. And that is something that we should never forget. We should never stop wondering how it felt, or how hard He cried, or the torture He went through. Polish not the cross, but remember it in its rugged state. For that was our price, and He paid that price. Shed His precious, untainted blood for us. He took our price and paid it. Took our debt and freed us. That is real freedom. The old rugged cross that my precious Jesus carried, was hung on, that He bled on. For me. And for you. He could have called down 1,000 angels, 10,000 angels. But He chose, out of love for the Father and for us, to be that sacrifice on that old rugged cross. No. Let us not polish the old rugged cross.